Nigel Farage, well, he hasn't taken that 2 weeks off yet because I think he was on breakfast television this morning. Anyway, we're joined by UKIP's sole MP, the former Conservative Douglas Carswell, UKIP MP now for Clacton, got re-elected. On that, you've decided not to go for the leadership yourself. Right. Do you have an idea yet who you would like to be the UKIP leader?
Well, I think there are 4 or 5 very good people. Paul Nuttall, Suzanne Evans, Patrick O'Flynn, Diane James, Stephen Wolfe. These are people who've fought and won seats in the European Parliament, who have a different perspective on the way forward. And I think we need to listen to them and make a considered decision.
So you haven't made your mind up yet?
No, I haven't. But I think all of them bring real qualities.
Is there not at the back of your mind a fear that that was it for UKIP? That it's essentially over, an insurgent party that simply in the end didn't surge?
No, I don't think that's the case, because the things that drive UKIP are fundamentally a feeling of disconnect between the voters and the political establishment. And without political reform, that's not going to go away. And the need for this alternative to the Tweedledee versus Tweedledum is very strong. We've seen it in Scotland, actually. I mean, the alternative to Tweedledee, Tweedledum are the SNP. That feeling of disaffection isn't going to stop at the border, or Hadrian's Wall, you might say.
But contrary to all informed punditry, England has essentially gone back to a two-party system. We thought we'd move to a multi-party system, but in terms of seats, which in our constitution is what matters, it's a two-party system.
Of course, the rules written by the political establishment rig it so that it favours the cartel. All sorts of things.
Well, it didn't favour it in Scotland.
All sorts of things favour the established parties. But in terms of voter share, I think we see a growth in support for alternatives. Now, it's slightly skewed by the collapse of the Lib Dem vote, but a lot of that Lib Dem vote came our way, and I think we've seen an extraordinary number of people in England and Wales voting for a radical alternative. I don't think the two-party system is looking too healthy. Perhaps the dysfunctional electoral system, which produces Tweedledee and Tweedledum, is intact, but it's not going to be intact for much longer.
Well, I would suggest to you it's going to be intact at least until 2020, because, I mean, I can well see why UKIP would want some kind of proportional representation. You got almost 4 million votes, and you got 1 MP. But I don't for the life of me see how you're going to get electoral reform this side of 2020.
No, when I was a Conservative MP, I tabled amendments with Caroline Lucas in favour of STV. That's a multi-member system. Yeah. And I think the case for that is going to become pretty
I'm not arguing about the case, I'm arguing about the practicality of getting it.
Sure.
You won't get it this side of 2020.
Let's face it. Even if we got reform this week, it's not going to change the outcome of the last election. I grant you that. But the agenda that demands for political reform, I think, is going to get louder and stronger. We need not just electoral reform. We need a power to recall MPs. We need open primary candidate selection. We need shorthand for this is direct democracy. We need to move away from this deferential system of democracy where we leave it to a political clique, and we need much more direct democracy. And I think demand for that in a country that's used to endless self-selection with the internet is going to grow.
Well, I wonder if it is in the end, because I hear what you say and you're very passionate about it, but let's just look at the situation. The Lib Dems, who often care about a lot of these things too, they're down to 8 MPs. I don't think it's too much of going out on a limb to say the Labour Party, as it rebuilds itself, is not going to get hooked on constitutional reform. It has to engage with Middle England and Middle Scotland. And the SNP, who theoretically are in favour of PR, why would they really, when on this system, with 50% of the vote, they got 95% of the MPs?
Put aside narrow party partisanship. I just wonder if the left in this country is about to rediscover that sort of democratic tradition that it's lost sight of. If they don't, it's going to be great news for UKIP because we can make big inroads. But I suspect that there will be candidates for the Labour leadership who believe in electoral reform and direct democracy too. So I think things are about to get very interesting.
What do you think of the position of UKIP now, Kevin?
Well, I understand it when you get 1 MP for 4 million votes, and I actually back electoral reform. There was a referendum, we got hammered 2 to 1. And you've got to win on the current system in order to introduce it. And I actually think it would be wrong for the Conservatives to introduce it now because it wasn't in the manifesto. They didn't promise it. Now, I'd celebrate with you, Douglas, if the Conservatives in their 2020 manifesto, along with Labour, Lib Dems, your good selves, everybody puts it in. But I think it's very unlikely, because there's always a vested interest. Your vested interest is reform, their vested interest is no reform.
But it's a long march. It's a long march.
Yeah.
I think it'd be like the Bataan Death March. Nobody makes it in the end.
How very optimistic.
Keir Hardie's party started small. And you know, some would say it's getting small again.
I was going to say, perhaps now wasn't the best time to use that analogy.
Douglas is absolutely right to say that there are 3.7 million voters, apart from what, the 20,000 or 30,000 who voted for Douglas and Clacton, who've lost their votes. Completely disadvantaged. That has got to be a massive problem. 12% of the electorate, whatever it is. Huge problem for whoever is governing the country.
Well, it is when you look at the number of MPs the SNP got.
Well, however, there is
got more than the SNP and the Liberal Democrats combined.
You needed 3.9 million votes to get one MP. I think they got an MP for every 23,000 or 24,000.
I was going to say, David Cameron has an opportunity here, and as do the Labour Party, is that, you know, what are the things that really upset people who voted UKIP? Arrogance, politics, special advisors running the country, the Metropolitan Elite, Europe, immigration. All those problems, they'll still be there in some shape or form, but they may not be as acute by 2020. Cameron could sort out the EU thing, he could win back some powers on immigration.
Boundary reform's going to help. I mean, boundary reform is likely to go ahead. I would certainly support boundary reform.
Does that help you?
Oh, of course it does. Because well, look at the disproportionate representation that the SNP got compared to UKIP. Anything that recalibrates the number of seats to make them more proportionate is going to be good for UKIP.
There will be quite a number of issues in which the government can count on your support, I would suggest.
I'm going to be pragmatic about it. I'm going to be absolutely consistent with my free market, classical liberal philosophy.
Wouldn't rule out a new peer for Clacton, I would suggest.
A new peer, you mean something that you have rides on rather than something House of Lords.
Yes. Something that juts out into the sea.
For a moment, I misunderstood
you. A little bit of money going Clacton's way.
No. I don't do. I wouldn't do pork barrel politics. No. But you know, there are certain things where I think I'm going to agree. Boundary change, I will agree with the government on because we need it.
And the European referendum.
Absolutely. And you know, I think there are all sorts of things where I will support a sensible left-wing opposition.
I said to you yesterday, and I'm still not quite sure what the answer is, that if it looks like we are now going to have a referendum, and either we'll vote to stay in or we'll vote to come out. Either way, I'm not quite sure what the future of UKIP is after that.
Well, I think that there's a huge need for an alternative, a party that believes in localism. It's not just about bringing powers back home from Brussels and leaving them in Westminster. I think we need a localist revolution. We need direct democracy to replace the system of deferential 18th century representative democracy. We need to get rid of the rotten borough system that we've got. So there's a huge agenda. Coming out of the European Union is just the beginning of the change this country needs. But if we're prepared to be classically liberal and free market, I think the sky's the limit.
Okay. Sure. That was